welcome to this Nuyem Event, to those who are joining us in this call right now and those who will be listening to the recording. I'm going to start by way of gratitude, giving thanks for all of our relations and all of Earth's creations, giving thanks for all our relations, for the two-legged, for the four-legged, for the ones that swim, for the ones that fly, for the ones that crawl upon the earth, for the ones we cannot touch with our hands, but that we are touched by deep inside, giving thanks for this beautiful web of creation that we're a part of, and every strand that makes up that web of creation. Honoring and giving thanks for our homeland, for the place where the mountains meet the ocean, for the shifting of the seasons, for the rhythms and cycles. Giving thanks for all the creations that call that place home, all the rooted ones, all the plants, all the winged relations, all the ones that swim that call that place home. Giving thanks at this time for the memory of our ancestors echoing through the mountains and through the waters and through the trees and through the rocks. Giving thanks for the echo of their light as it lives through us and gives through us and loves through us in a good way, in a loving way, in a sacred way. Giving thanks at this time for this coming together of hearts and energy bodies and spirits at this time in the way of connecting, in the way of relating, in the way of understanding, in the way of learning. Honoring and giving thanks for our wellness, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and mentally, and all the things that uphold and sustain our wellness, big and small, seen and unseen. Giving thanks at this time for the steady drumbeat beating in synergistic union with the heartbeat of Mother Earth. Giving thanks at this time for the memory of our ancestors beating in our hearts and pulsing through our veins and living in our blood memory, and returning in moments of stillness and moments of sacred and moments of beauty. Giving thanks at this time for the moments of beauty that uplift our spirit, moments of beauty that bring healing to our hearts, moments of beauty and connectedness that remind us why we're here. Giving thanks at this time for the healing and returning and reclamation of that which they could not take from us. Giving thanks for the returning and the healing and empowerment of our language, of our culture, of our stories, of our tools, of our crafts, of our arts. And giving thanks for all the things that support the returning of that. Giving thanks for the meeting place of people and land, and all the ways in which that the land and the elements have influenced our people, influenced the development of our culture, the way it sounds, the way it feels, the way the land has influenced our clothing, our tools, our art, our stories, our ceremonies, and giving thanks for that place of connectedness to the homeland that lives in each of us. May that place continue to be nourished and honored and upheld in a good way, in a loving way, in a sacred way. Wow.
Awesome, thank you very much. I really like those introductions. I'm not too sure what episode this is, but I'm just really thankful that everyone comes in to support these things. I really feel that we're reaching the right group of people, and again, really thanks to Ab, I've really pursued the language through the orthography, and as he gently teaches us, I think the one word we're taking away becomes two words, becomes three, and before we know it, we're just getting such a better understanding on how it works, like in a function. So when he was saying that we talk literal and right to the point, it's things like that we have to keep in mind, and there's only the closest interpretation. Let's all take a minute to come look at Chase's baby.
Welcome, baby. Welcome, mama.
So that's a special guest tonight.
Beautiful. I'm so glad you guys made it. So glad you're
Thank you.
Aww.
Stay as long as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Congratulations. Can't wait to meet him.
Mm-hmm.
Remember as the time was leading up, I was recording little songs I would make up, telling baby to helicast, and then Gus, 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 come, come, come. So hopefully baby knows my voice already. So I think Ab has another presentation today. I don't ask Ab. I don't schedule anything for him. This is all the work that he wants to present. Again, if anyone has questions for him in the future, he'll probably write it down and accommodate that. So he's a really great teacher, and he's just here to make things easier for us. I always have a notepad open for myself, because as we go through, there's a lot of stuff that I don't know, I'm getting familiar with, and handwriting and practicing it. We'll start building the really good habit. So, wow, take it away, Ab.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to open up a Word document. So I came across this word today and I found it really interesting. And I wanted to use this word to demonstrate that process that Dustin has been mentioning about reading highs the words backwards. So this word, if you go from left to right like you would with normal words, it's tu to llwchtlw. Tu to llwchtlw. So if you take it from the end, the right side of the word, and break it down into syllables, we start off with this these two letters at the end. So those of you who are not familiar with the hybrid orthography, this first symbol here might look a little strange to you, but this is called a lambda. And we use it to represent kind of like a DL sound. So if you think of words, English words like madly or sadly, gladly, that's the sound there, gla. And the letter U, I've mentioned before about some of the ways that highs the sounds behave. One thing to keep in mind is that this lambda, this is a consonant. Consonants always sound the same. They always keep the same sound. It's the vowels that will change depending on what's in front of them. So a regular U sounds like oo. So if you have a lambda and a U together, it sounds like glue, glue. So you have the DL, like in madly, gla, and then oo. So that's glue. So why don't you guys give that a try? Glue.
Glue.
Okay, good. This next syllable here, again, this might look a little unusual, this first one here. So this is what we call a tilde L. So it's basically a regular letter L, a lowercase l, and this symbol, which we call a tilde. So this curved line goes through the middle of the L. And that's what it looks like there when they're combined. And this sounds like. So the way that you make that sound is if you take like an S sound, pay attention to where your tongue is when you make a sound. So it's kind of towards the tip of your tongue is coming up towards like behind your upper front teeth. It's not quite touching. What you can do is you can hold that sound and then push your tongue forward, and it'll sound like. That's the tilde L sound. Sometimes it's called the slurpy L, and that's what it sounds like on its own. And then there's an X with a line on top of it. So this is what we call a back X or a uvularized X. So your uvula is towards the back of your mouth. So it's basically that little piece of skin that's hanging down from the back of your mouth. That's your uvula. And that's where this back X is coming from. And it sounds like. So already we have some unusual sounds in terms of, like, these are sounds that don't exist in English. So you have, and then you have, and then gla. The sound exists in English, but it's represented by two separate symbols in English. So if you combine these, we had glue, and the syllable in front of it sounds like sluch, sluch. So if you combine them, you have sluchtlu, sluchtlu. So you guys give it a try.
Chluch-clú.
Okay, good. So now we're going to add another syllable. We have a C with an apostrophe on top of it. So this makes a sound. It's a very sharp, very abrupt sound. And this E is going to sound kind of like ah. Just like this E kind of sounds like ah. So we had glue, then chluchtlu. Now we're going to say tchluchtlu. Tchluchtlu.
Chluch-clú.
Okay, good. So we're almost there. We have one last syllable, the very first syllable in the word. So we have another sharp C, and then a U. So this is a regular U. So it's just like this U here, where it sounds like ooh. So if we work our way back again, so we have glue, 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 and now we have glue. I'll say it one more time, and then you guys can try.
Chluch-clú.
You gonna go, Sam? Do the do do do.
Okay, that's really good. I'm really impressed with what I'm hearing. So now I'm going to share the real reason why I wanted to go through this with you. I actually had a lot of trouble trying to pronounce this word because I came across it in the dictionary, and I pride myself on being able to sound out any word that I come across in any of the Heisler dictionaries that were made by the linguists. I'm not kidding when I tell you I worked on this word for about half an hour because I couldn't get it. And then I started using my own trick, my own method of working backwards through the word. And then I started to get it. So now it's tütefluchtlu. So now it's become more natural for me, and I can say it at a fairly fast pace. Whereas the first time I tried to sound it out, I got really mixed up, and I just couldn't get through it. So if you can sound out this word, you can sound out any Heisler word. So you guys you've taken a big step already just by being able to pronounce this word with accurate pronunciation, with the individual sounds. These are some of the more challenging sounds in the Heisler language. A lot of them are here in this word. So you're already off to a really good start. As I said, I was really impressed with everybody's pronunciation. So congratulations, you're off to just a great start in pronouncing Heisler.
Thanks, Sam. It's because of
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And I also wanted to show that, like, I'm still learning myself. I know a fair bit about the language, to give myself some credit. there's still a lot that I need to work on too. So the fact that I was having difficulty with this word tells me that I still have a lot to learn about the language, but I'm also off to a really good start in terms of my overall understanding of the language. So I wanted to share that with everybody. I'm going to switch to a different document here. And before I do that, I just wanted to go back to last week where I was talking about Hein Vink and what he was saying about developing his own writing system. So he was the first established linguist that worked with the Haisla language. So he was the first one to actually develop a standard writing system for it. And he talks about it in one of his documents. So first of all, I want to correct myself. I said that I thought he talked about it in his dictionary. He called it a dictionary of Haisla. It actually was a different document, and that's the one I'm going to pull up right now. Okay, so this is his document that he calls a first course in Haisla. So this is a document that he developed with the goal of teaching the Haisla language. And it's broken down into different lessons. Each lesson is based on a single sound in the Haisla language. So in his introduction, he goes through quite a bit of material. So I wanted to share something that I thought was really interesting. So I'm just going to read through this. So he says, the principle underlying a good alphabet is that each letter or combination of letters always represent the same sound. For then you are able to pronounce a written word, even if it is one you have not seen or heard before. All you have to do is to pronounce it letter by letter. Think of a musician. When he really knows how to read music or musical notes, he will manage to play even pieces of music he has not seen or heard before. Inversely, with a good alphabet, in the indicated sense, you are never in doubt how to write a word as long as you can pronounce that word slowly for yourself. From an educational point of view, Haisla has over 50 different speech sounds, many of which do not exist in English. Consequently, a series of 50 newly designed letters, such as these. So this is what I was mentioning before. You can see that they're handwritten, and like the document is typewritten. I don't know the exact date of this of when this document was produced. I'm thinking around 74, 75, somewhere around there. So he has this symbol here, a circle with a line, a straight line going through it. We have 3 straight lines, you have kind of a squiggly line, and then kind of an angled line coming down from it. You have a symbol here that looks like an up-facing arrow. So I'm pretty sure he invented these symbols. And he said that a series of 50 newly designed letters would make a good Haisla alphabet. So what he's saying here is that one option that he had was to completely create a new alphabet from scratch, from not using English letters or anything recognizable. So basically he was saying, like, this is one direction he could have gone, but as you'll find out, that's not really the way that he went. So we continue on. He says, also good would be an alphabet consisting of existing letters plus newly designed ones. That's actually the course that he took. Suppose the existing letters are taken from the English alphabet. It is important to realize then that this does not imply that the letters must be pronounced in the English manner. I think that's a very important point. So he goes on to explain, there is no law saying that an I must be pronounced as it is in English, bit. So an I doesn't have to sound like I, as in bit, any more than there is a law saying that an I must be pronounced in a Latin manner, that is, as the E in the English B. The pronunciation of letters is a matter of habit, and we can change our habits when circumstances require us to do so. As far as Haisla is concerned, if we want to use existing English letters in its alphabet, such a change of habits becomes unavoidable, as Haisla and English do not have many sounds in common. The B of the English alphabet, for instance, can be used only under the stipulation that it is pronounced more or less as the P in the English spring, but not as the P in the English pit. So he's basically describing the fact that different letters have things in common between them that you wouldn't normally think they would have in common. Like the letter B and the letter P are directly related to each other. So if you think of the English alphabet, you wouldn't know that because B is at the beginning of the alphabet and then P is way over towards the end of it. So you wouldn't think that there's any relationship between those two letters, but there is. And it's because they are pronounced in a very similar manner. So B and P are what we call labial sounds. Labial means lips. So you're closing your lips to start the sound, and then you're opening your lips to end the sound. So B and P, they're made in exactly the same way. The difference between them is whether you're using your voice or not using your voice. So B is a voiced sound, B. B. P is voiceless. P. P. So that's basically what he's describing here is there's differences between how consonants can actually be related to each other. That's how they're related, is how they're made. And that's one of the reasons why when I show people the hybrid orthography, I don't show A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I show B, P, glottalized P, M, or ejective P, M, glottalized M. And people might wonder like what those letters have in common. Well, they're all related because they're made the same way. There's little differences here and there, but they're essentially the same sound. The difference is in how you're manipulating that sound through your vocal tract. So that's kind of what he's talking about there. And I think he brings up some very important points, and it gives you a lot of insight as to how he actually developed his orthography. So what I'll do here is I'll actually go through and show you a few of the lessons. So this was his first orthography that he developed. There was a second one that he used in his dictionary of Haisla. So the first exercise here is around the letter A. So A, he describes the letter A as he wrote down here, a short A, alkya, hamgila. So it's pronounced like the underlined sounds in mark or but. I actually don't think this mark is a good example, but is. So it makes that sound. The long A, wa, hana, like the A as in we are, but often somewhat longer. So this is coming down to the fact that he has a different way of treating vowels. He doesn't treat vowels like you do in English. So an is basically represented by this A. This first word is ums. Ums. So why don't you guys give it a try? Ums. Okay, good. Umps means thick, and it refers to a fluid. So umps is a thick fluid. Here he has two A's, but they actually sound different from each other. So the first word, or the first sound here is owl. Owl. And then this second syllable is kya. Kya. So the whole word sounds like al kya. Al kya. So you guys can give it a try.
Alkia.
Okay.
Okay, good. So alkia means finished or to stop. The next word is hamgila. So you guys can try hamgila.
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 Okay, good. Hamgila is to cook. And then this one, he doesn't really show any difference between a shorter A and a longer A. The way we do it now is what you see here written in pencil is two A's together. So when you see a double A, it basically means it's an ah sound, but it's longer. So this is wah, wah.
Wow.
Wa.
Okay, and wah means big river. The next one is Mia. Mia.
Mia.
Mia.
So that is salmon. And he used a Y to represent that E sound. Nowadays, we use a letter I. So this would be M-I-A, Mia. So those are a few examples of the letter A. He goes through some examples of the letter E. So here's where we start to see some differences in terms of the special symbols. So we have a letter A, and there are two dots over top of it. Those two dots are, there's a word for it, it's called an umlaut. Umlaut. So I'm not sure if you had a word for this. I just call it an umlaut A. And in the hybrid orthography, we represent the sound with a regular A and an I. And this sounds like eh, like in the English words met, pet, or bet. Other words like set, get, let. So it's an eh sound. So the first word here is ne, ne.
Na.
So
Nah.
yeah, so
Ne.
pay attention to the eh sound, ne. And this refers to snow. It specifically refers to snow on the ground. So that's one of the special symbols that he used in his first orthography.
Does
He
that
goes on,
differ from the word snowing? To snow?
yeah, to snow is quisa,
Quisa.
quisa. So that refers to snow coming down. So he did use a letter O. We don't use this anymore in the present orthography, partly because it's not really an O sound. And it's not really an ah sound either. It's kind of somewhere in between. It's a very unique sound. It doesn't exist in English. And in the hybrid orthography, it's represented by the letters A, U. And it kind of sounds like oh, oh. So it's not ah, and it's not oh. It's kind of in between. It's somewhere in the middle. Oh. So the first word here is oh, oh.
Oh,
Op.
Just have a quick question there. I see
Mhm.
that little indicator line on there. Was that supposed to be an older version of a cute accent marker, or is it just his way of showing its prolonged O?
I'm not really sure. I don't think he wrote these. I think these are from somebody else. I think somebody took a look at it after he typed it up
Oh,
and
okay.
and edited the document according to their understanding. So I'm not really sure what those symbols over the O's actually mean.
Hmm.
Yeah, so he continues going through the vowels. Exercise 7 is where he starts looking at consonants. So the letter C is like a T and an S together. So like the English word bits or mitts, kits. So it's kind of a softer sound. And this first word here, I think this is actually, this should be a more pronounced C. I think this C should actually have an apostrophe on top. So this is, I'd have to check on that though. I'm not entirely sure. But it's either Tusa or Tusa. I'm kind of leaning towards the second one, Tusa. Tusa.
Tsusa.
Okay, good. And that means dry. Tusa. Again, I'll have to check on that to see if it's a regular C or a glottalized or ejective C. He has the letter Z here. So the Z kind of behaves like a D and a Z together. So if you think of the English word ads. So this first word here is zan. Zan.
It's on.
It's on. Kind of reminds me of how our elders say zipper. Ziploc.
Zipper.
Yeah.
Yeah, so zan is a harpoon for catching seals.
Reminds me how my grand said Jonathan.
Yeah, it's pretty close to the English J sound. So that's something else that is different, is there's no J in any of the official orthographies. It would either be a C as in T or a Z as in Z. That's basically how they would deal with that sound, trying to get close to the English J.
So would it be Tedzwa? Tedzwa River?
Tedzwa.
Because it's usually Tezwa.
Tedzwa. I believe so. I'd have to take a look at that word to see. Tedzwa. Tedzua. I'm thinking there would be something between the Z and the W. Again, I would have to check on that. And then he was the first one that started to put apostrophes on top of consonants. So these are modifiers. I talked about modifiers before. The fancy word for it is diacritic. And that's basically how all of the orthographies that were developed for High's law work, is they have the regular letters. Most of those letters can be modified by adding a diacritic to it. So these are what we call glottalized consonants. This M, N, L, Y, and W. What happens here is that when you put an apostrophe on top of an M, what happens is that it puts a little pause in front of that M. That's called a glottal stop. So like the second word here, this is hatemas. Hatemas.
Hitmas.
Hetmas.
So this would be spelled with an H and an I. So it sounds like hey, hatemas. And hatemas, of course, is a chief, one of our hereditary chiefs.
Do you know how to say, like, you know how we say mujik and mukmujik? Do you know how we say all? Because mukmujik is like all women chiefs. Is what would be the one for all male chiefs? Hitmas.
So hatemas is one hereditary chief.
Yeah.
There's a couple of different ways you can actually pluralize it. That's one thing that's different about the Haida language, is that there's often more than one way to pluralize a word. I've seen as many as like 3 or 4 different pluralized forms for one word. So what you could do is actually switch the accent to the last syllable and say hatemas. hate mas. That would be a plural form. So that would mean chiefs. You could also say hate amas or hate amas. I'd have to check on that to see where the accent is. But it would be like you're taking the word hate mas and then adding another syllable just before the M, this glottalized M. So it would be hate amas. Again, I'd have to check on the actual spelling of that to see where the accent would go. So that's one thing that is different about Heinvink's first orthography, is that there's no indication as to where you would place emphasis in any of the words. So that he addressed that in his second orthography, where he started to use a specific symbol that shows where you place stress in a word or emphasis in a word. So that is some of Heinvink's first orthography and what it looks like. So you might have seen some of those words before in his writing, or you might have seen his second orthography, which was a little bit different. His second orthography is where he had the little circles after a consonant. So those were indicating a rounded consonant. So like gua, qua, hua. That's basically what the little raised circle indicated in his second orthography. So that's how I'm able to tell which version of his orthography I'm looking at, is looking at specific symbols. So if I see an A with 2 dots on top of it, I know that's his first orthography. If I see the little raised O's, then I know that's his second orthography. And yeah, so that's basically how he worked. He started with his first writing system, and then he worked on it as he kept working with our language, and he made changes to it and tried to improve the way he was representing Haisla in writing format. So his main goal was to try and replicate the unique sounds that are in the Haisla language. So he went outside of the English alphabet to do that. So he was the first one to actually incorporate that spelling, that way of spelling. So yeah, so I thought I'd show you a little bit of Heinvink's orthography and basically some of how it works. Wow.
Awesome. What does your brain go through in the process of watching that evolve? Like now that we're talking about how you wanted to do a separate dictionary representing categorized, as in like all plants in one, all tools in another, so people get to see the patterns within that and be able to take the information in quicker. What does it feel like for you to have a hybrid orthography now that you've been able to take the best of all worlds and put them all together for better functions and go way back in history and be able to read what was done in the past?
Yeah, I think the hybrid orthography is really helpful because each orthography has strengths and they also have weaknesses. So the hybrid orthography is a combination of Emmenbach's second orthography and some elements of the Lincoln and Rath orthography. So they published their dictionary in the mid 80s. And I believe Emmenbach was working with Haisla at that time, but I think he was just starting to kind of work on his own writing system at that point. So looking back, people might wonder, like, if we're not using these writing systems anymore, then why keep them around? Why preserve them? I think there's a lot to be learned from the older orthographies, because as you go through them, as you learn how all of them work, you can kind of see how linguists were learning about our language and how it worked and thinking of different ways to better represent our sounds. So I think that's really interesting to look back and see that progression from Heinvink's first orthography up to and a box second orthography, and how all of that kind of developed. So I think there's real value in looking back at the previous writing systems, the older ones, even if we don't use them anymore. I think there's still a lot of value there.
I think, what was that old newsletter called? Was it the Nanaqua?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've witnessed Ab showing me, bringing me further back than all of this into Reverend George Rayleigh's work and representation on it. And when I got introduced to that, it was all in what we know as spell it the way it sounds. Half of the word might have been capitalized, the other half was in lowercase forms, and I could not make sense of it. But it was really interesting to watch Ab tell me what they were trying to say. And I said, how do you know that? And he said, because I know the sounds, and it could only mean this. And he broke down that old one, and he showed us the new word for it in the hybrid orthography. So by knowing the sounds that he's representing, really makes these habits happen a lot faster. So all that coding he was showing you there, I think it was a little bit more abrupt, especially with the two dots on the A's and stuff like that. And I think they did better visuals in representing it in the next orthographies and stuff. But I find that one actually, even myself, to be a lot more difficult, because I'm so used to what I've learned and what Ab teaches now, that I go back to there and I want to make spelling corrections on it. Like, there should be apostrophe in front of there, and then the combinations he's talking about. I want to jump in and say that, but I don't want to be jumping into one of Ab's teaching tools there. But it's amazing to see what he has been able to do. And I personally, I think the ABCs for me, when I developed my own, well, I was already developed in the Northern Wakish, or what they call the Wakishan family, and they had A, B, C, D. It was all represented, but there are missing certain things. Like, we had to have 3 different A's at the beginning, where this one only had 1. So I went in there and I actually put the tilted L's and stuff in there. And I thought it was a great tool just to decolonize the alphabet right away. And the people that can't really understand why Ab represents, let's say, all the P's and stuff, and what he had just spoken about in that aspect, because they can't take that English out of it. So they relate everything they know about the orthographies to English, and it's so hard to separate. So I use that tool myself to show people that this isn't why we do it like this, but it helps them decolonize their mind. And then I'll show one of Ab's developed. Now, this is why these are related. And it's amazing, because I don't think I know all so much. Like, we were talking to Byron earlier, and he said he didn't feel that he knew all so much. But when you're the teacher and you're forced into it, all of these synapses fire, and before you know it, you catch yourself and you're like, holy, I actually know quite a bit. So I think we shouldn't sell ourselves short on this. And it goes back to what Paul Knieks was saying about you probably know more words than you think. Try write them all down in a book. And now we have good hybrid orthography that once you write it down in that book and you know those sounds, it'll never change. So when I was working at the Elder Center, we had this idea of trying to save our language, this and that, but I myself carried around a book. I would write it down the best way it sounds to me. And then when I was away from all the fluent speakers, I could not even read my own writing, and I'd have to come back and ask them, what does this mean? And I couldn't even sound it out for them to recollect it. So I thought it was an impossibility until I did my interview with Teresa and Kaylee. And even at that one, I said, I don't believe I'll ever be fluent. I don't believe that to be true, because we've tried and just nothing is working. Skip ahead a couple months, Ab comes out with his first teaching tools. And I think what I jumped into it was vowel combinations. And he started showing the vowel combinations with a couple words, and then showing us sounding it out. And half of the people wanted to, and the other half, it was like a chore almost. But the people that wanted it are the ones that understood. They started taking this in, and it just gets so much easier. So when you do the single sounds to vowel combinations and the relations to ABS teaching tools, and a lot of them are on YouTube. So to further go on, you can go on to ABS YouTube, his websites. And the reason I find his websites to be so beneficiary to us is because we live in an online world now. And if you want the translations, you don't have to reach out to Ab all the time. Go check out his website, and he has a whole bunch of stuff to copy and paste so that we're actually representing it in that one way. And when you're copying and pasting it, it's so much easier. So prior to me being able to understand a lot of this stuff, everybody wanted to get onto the keyboard and start doing all this stuff. And I never asked for it. I said, no way. I wanted to understand all of these for sure before I went on. And then I was copying and pasting everything because to get the glotalized apostrophe and let's say the acute accent marker, you have no capability of doing that without the keyboard. So I'd copy and paste everything, and I'd actually sometimes make words like that. Then when I finally felt confident enough that I wasn't gonna make mistakes, I finally said to Ab, I think I'm ready. So he installed the what we know as the Keyman, Keyman?
Yeah.
The Keyman keyboard on there. And I started really fastly getting this habit of being able to write our language right on the keyboard. So something even more impressive than that is Abs developed, I think, 2 other keyboards as well.
I've developed a few. It's basically like the Heisler keyboard that's available on the Keyman website. That was developed by First Voices and Larry Hayashi. He basically got the ball rolling on that. The first time I met him, we sat down and actually I went through all of the symbols with him, the ones that were going to go that I wanted to have included in the keyboard. So from there, it was developed from by First Voices, and I was the first one to test it, and I had some experience with virtual keyboards before, so I kind of had an idea of how it would work, and I tested it out, and I took to it pretty quickly. So I was pretty good at using the keyboard right from the start, but there are reasons for that. Number one, I developed the hybrid orthography, so I know all of the symbols that are involved in it, like back to front, front to back, in my sleep, basically. So that's number one. Number two, I had some experience with virtual keyboards before, so that definitely helped me out in terms of figuring out how to use the Heisler keyboard. And another thing is that I have had a lot of practice. I mean, it's not a stretch to say I use it every day. So I'm typing with the keyboard every day. So I couldn't even estimate how many hours of practice I've had using the keyboard. So all of that is what makes me a good keyboard user, is just I have all of this preset knowledge that I can draw upon. So I kind of hesitate to use the keyboard in front of people that are new to the language, because I think some people might get the wrong idea and think, well, he's so good at using it, it must be easy to use and to learn, when it really takes training. Like, you need training to use the Heisler keyboard. It's not something you can just jump into. So what I would suggest is actually learning how to handwrite first. So when you handwrite all the symbols, then you start to really get to know them. And when I say get to know it, I mean really get to know it. Not know it a little bit. I mean to the point where you've mastered it. When you've mastered handwriting, the hybrid orthography, then you're ready for the keyboard. That's the way I would teach it ideally. So this goes back to what I was saying before about learning in stages. So learning the orthography first, learning how it works, what the symbols look like, associating the sounds with the symbols, then learning handwriting. Once you get really good with that and you fully understand it, then you're ready for the keyboard, in my opinion. So that's the way I would teach things ideally.
And, that book that I showed you guys where I found our old orthography and I brought it up to the hybrid orthography, I handwrit all of those out. And then I started seeing the coding of the connecting suffixes or connecting sentences. And it was after all of that, I think it was about 5 stories I did. And that's when I felt I was, at that time I said worthy of giving it a shot. And then I took my handwritten stuff and I put it right down into using the, prior to that, I was copying and pasting everything. If I needed a gutturalized K, I would go find one, copy and paste it in. And then if I needed a rounded gutturalized K, I'd find that, just copy and paste that and put that in. And now I'm looking back on how strenuous that was because it took me probably 3 stories in to finally get the keyboard proper. So it does take a bit of practice and memory coding, I would call it, but it does come second nature after all the stepping stools first.
Yeah,
All
and
the
going back, I kind of got sidetracked there, but you're asking about the keyboards that I developed myself. So that's one of the benefits of a program or something like Keyman is that it's open source. So you can download like completed keyboards and use them, but you can also download what's called Keyman Developer and write your own keyboards, like develop your own. So I have my own versions of keyboards based on all of the highest orthography. So I have one based on Hein Vink's first orthography, his second one. I have one for Lincoln and Rath. And I have, well, it didn't really need, I didn't really need to develop one for Emma Bach because the hybrid orthography is already based on mostly on Emma Bach. So yeah, there's 3 keyboards that I developed based on the very first orthographies that were developed. So they're not like fully developed. They're mostly like prototypes, but they're good enough so that I can use them. And I've thought about what to do with those keyboards if I want to try and make them available to the public. But again, there's kind of the danger of people jumping in and not really knowing how to use it. So I think that's something that I would save for after people learn the hybrid orthography. Then we can take a look at the, I guess you could call them legacy orthographies. But yeah, so I've talked about that before with coding. So there is code that you have to write to develop your own custom keyboards. But yeah, so I have a little bit of experience with that. So I was able to actually develop my own custom keyboards based on previous orthographies.
So it must be really nice for you to see Emin Bach's work because he was able to study, let's say, Hein Vink's and then go into Lincoln and Rath's, which is quite a different dictionary altogether, especially which one you're looking at, if it's the root or the words or whatnot. But he was able to bring it up and like the schwa alone, bringing all of those together to flow in such a way, I think was really good about Emma Bach's work. And it's visually pleasing as well. Like it's a lot of people, like in that first word that you gave today, would think that that's visually attacking. There's a lot of languages that I just, they almost overload my brain that I don't want to try sound them out. And there's a lot of different representations. Ab actually knows how to break apart those. He studies many different languages, and you know those languages that use triangles and squares and things like that. He actually could read a lot of, yeah. So how it's just impressive to me and not many people know he's actually in his own spare time goes in to learn the jargon,
Yeah, Chinook jargon.
Chinook jargon, and he was able to do little mini presentations and converse with other people throughout our family dialect, I believe, which were they were just really interested in him after, and yeah, it's really neat to see how far he's taken his study. So again, Ab and I used to just get together and look at other languages, and that's when I keep coming back to that Japanese and Apple, because when the Japanese, what the lesson we watched is that there's not much you could do with that apple, so it's predetermined that that person is eating it, which I thought was just really cool. So I think it relates to a lot of the ways our language works in that too. Well, what are you going to do with that apple? So thank you for your presentation, Zab. Yeah, I really like that, and it's really nice to see you go right back to Hind Vink and do that, because I know Ivy used that one a lot, eh? So if you
Yeah.
see a lot of the transcribed songs that they did, the Ivy would do it handwritten out and like hand transcribed songs. There was one in the Elder Center, I believe it was Silent Night. I wish I knew what happened to that copy, because you'd be able to bring it to someone like Ab, and he'd be able to give you a better description and breakdown of the meaning. Does it actually mean this English? Or, and now that I've brought myself so far into the understanding, it's like they're missing things in the English translation. I would have said this. I would have said this. And that's just from my understanding at this level I'm at. So to be able to get a little bit farther, I would like to see myself sit with Ab for a little bit and go through. And you always hear the elders, what are you hearing there? What are you hearing? What's happening there? So I think there could be many English interpretations for our language that truly aren't as elegant as our language is. Like it's really cool when they say our language is infinite. It is such so, because when Ab is creating words for things, like one day he brought me fire hall. It was fire hall, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and why it works and the functions. And then I can't remember what I brought him. It was funny. I thought I made a word for lighter or something like that. That he was like, no, it's this. And he showed me, and it didn't hurt me whatsoever. I thought I was doing really good, and other people might interpret it as what I was saying, but we already had one developed for it. So yeah, it was pretty neat. It's so cool when you get it a really good understanding of the language and you start talking theory. And like I was saying again, when I'm reading in our language the stories that I handwritten out and I'm brought up to the hybrid orthography, when I'm reading the English version, there's so many things I would change now, and I would still use a mentor like Ab to bring in, just to make sure that, am I wrong or is this what I'm hearing? So I think that's a really good lesson. And again, I'm all about being corrected. I don't mind being corrected, because I've made really bad habits by instead of one sound, I would separate an L and H and basically pronounce it like an English word. And I don't like even speaking the word. It's such a simple word, but it's just until I'm comfortable saying it again, that habit has really broken that one word for me. And I'm on 3 years on trying to fix that one bad habit. And it's really hard, because my brain goes to what I first learned instead of the corrected version of that. So thank you, Ab. I would really like to see what you have in store for us next week. Again, he comes to my house every Sunday, and we basically he talks about what he wants to present next, and he kind of gives me a little preview. And I'd like to thank all the participants today. That first word that Ab had stated, it was hard for me as well. And going with that teaching tool backwards to forwards. And then I would also like to thank everybody that jumped in prior. I always use myself as an example, except 3 Sundays ago, I believe it was, maybe 4, I told Ab, I'm not going to be the first one to say it this time and stimulate everyone else trying. I want to see who was the first, because I've done this for our UBC. Ab had developed the courses for UBC, and I was sitting there supporting him through it, giving him my 2 cents on it. And if my 2 cents made sense to him, he would add it into there. If not, he would tell me why he wouldn't teach like that in his preference, or vice versa. But no one wanted to come in and sound things out or give it a shot, so I used myself. I was pretending to learn all of this stuff. Meanwhile, I got to sit there and help Ab develop those lessons. And I used myself as basically the first one to break the ice every time. And now I don't have to do that. I sat back today and I didn't have to say one word. I actually jumped in there because I felt like I wasn't participating. So thanks for everyone for really showing Ab, my teacher, how he's able to make a difference in especially these groups. And then think of all the people that are too shy to try do this around other people. They might be watching all the recordings and starting their first pronunciation on it. So it might be influencing more people than we know. A lot of people are shy. They always never wanted us to speak our language. And I believe the reason being from that is, if you're looking at the Wahiwis, all the broken up Watwes on our territory, the Watwes is one territory owned by a clan. The Wahiwis is our entire collective Watwes. So everything we know about the waking world and every part of our language developed all comes from what we were able to witness on this land. So the birds on the land, the Ulikins, the sky, the mountains, that's where our language comes from. It's the root of our ancestral homelands. So everything we know of the waking world is written in our language. So I believe that's why they tried to take it away, because we had direct roots to all of this. In the new documents, I've really started continuing my research. And now I found out how all of those little reserves were able to be made by the old chiefs. The actual hereditary leaders were fighting for us and these generations later to have a strong root in there. And the reason I believe they did that is so we never lost our rights and title, and so that in the future, when we fully understood the Swista, the white man's way, we're able to fight to get more of that returned. So I see other nations around, like neighboring nations, fighting to expand the reservations and stuff like that. And there's really good examples watching the hereditary ancestral leaders keep a strong foot in there by creating those little tiny broken up reserves that we have all over our territory, because they're places of great importance. Now there's generations like us that are going to be able to, for instance, get their rights and titles, as in the people that are being trained for actual chieftainship names. They're going to be able to take that rights and title. And since UNDRIP has been implemented in BC, automatically the ancestral leaders are the big bosses. Hey, that's part of UNDRIP. So imagine when they start their fights. Just last week, the people that were flooded out when the Kenny Dam was built, the people on the other side where they had their salmon disrupted, there was 3 nations in a big court case, and they just had won their title for that. And Rio Tinto inherited the liabilities from Alcan, and now Rio Tinto has to go in there and create the salmon streams again. So that just happened last week. Then if you look to 2 to 3 years ago, the Latin people that were flooded out of the Kenny Dam territory, they moved to other nations like Williams Lake and somewhere else. I think my Wakwa Teresa might know. And they actually won. I can't remember. I think it was $500 million for that, and that was divvied up throughout their people. So one day, big things can happen, and they could happen anytime. So it's just the people that have the will to continue fighting for our people in that way. And these people never fought for themselves, they fought for their people, which was just phenomenal to me. So to see a such good ending, now that you're having the salmon bearing streams restored after all of these years later, especially after a company had sold to another company, and now that that company has been held responsible for the past and the purchase of that company, gives us new ways of, I don't want to say fighting, restoring things, right? So really good teaching tools. And that Chiselatin lawsuit, man, it was like that thick. So it gives you a good blueprint on how to create the fight for these important things. So for example, when the Kenny Dam was flooding and unnecessary times, we had to go in there and ask them, all our Ulikins are running, they're spawning, and you guys are opening that big thing to flood it all out. You might be washing away that, and they modified their timelines for those leaks into the river and stuff like that. So these are again new ways that we have to learn how to be together in this new world here, hey? So after the break, I'm actually gonna start speaking about the history of Rediscovery International in our territory in the Kitlope, and some of the oldest camps that I'm aware of. And I think my sister Teresa knows exactly what year would have been the 30th anniversary. I'm not too sure if it might be this year or next year. But after I speak, Nicole's going to jump in and talk about her history with Rediscovery International and how far it actually goes out. I believe it's very important because this group has changed the lives of so many people. I myself have been, when I was a young teenager, a troublemaker, just not knowing my ancestral roots, I was getting in a lot of trouble and I almost got sent to jail. All my role models, what I thought were role models at that time, were going to jail, and I thought it was my turn. I was going to go to jail, lift weights, come out all tough and cool. And that's a great misconception I had. And when sentencing was happening, Rediscovery International actually approached the courts to take children, youth like myself, and show them a different way. And my dad, Darren Maitland, he knew about this. So he told the judge he could send this young man to correctional facility where he's going to learn how to be a better criminal and be able to play the system. Or you could send him to this new program called Rediscovery International, where he's going to learn what he doesn't know right now about himself. And that might change his whole mindset. So I got sentenced to Rediscovery. I now sit on the board of trustees of Rediscovery. All these years later, I went to Pearson College to be retrained, thanks to one of my first roles in my job for the Haza Nation. Teresa approached me and asked me to go get my training. I went out there again. It brought back the spirit, what I call the spirit of rediscovery. And everything I do, I'm looking at the language of as a thing of rediscovery. We're rediscovering our language. The songs I'm bringing back, we are rediscovering those songs. So everything for me is about rediscovery right now. And the day that came where I was being voted into the board to be a board member, I told them I'm one of the troubled youth that was sentenced to rediscovery. And then to make the elders and stuff around there laugh, I said I didn't know I was being sentenced to life. Because for me, this is a way of life for me now. Rediscovery is such a great tool, locally and international, to be able to help all people get back to their roots, to be able to preserve and fight. And if it wasn't for Rediscovery, after the break, I'll touch base on it a lot more. We could have lost great things, hey? So I think we'll take a 10-minute break from here and come back at 8:25. Does that sound good? And we know Ab might take off. He has lots of work to do. He's also in school, and he doesn't have any helpers. So all the language that Ab does, you got to think of one person in that position, everybody coming. So all the curriculum development, all the people teaching tools, everybody coming at him. Yeah. So yeah, go rest up. You probably have a lot on your plate, Ab. So thank you for each week. I look forward to next week, and we'll meet back here at 8:25. Does that sound good? Wow.
Well,
No, okay.
So Teresa put in the message, the Kitlope was the first established as a protected area on February 20th, 1996. This involved many organizations. Rediscovery, I can't remember the year it was founded, but one of my mentors and lifelong friends, Tom Henley, the co-founder of it, and I believe Gudra, founded it in Haida Gwaii to get the youth back on the land, and it turned into what it is now. So from my understanding, it was Haida Gwaii first, New Hulk second. Paul Kenieks had just told me, I thought it was a Kitlope was the third, but there was one established prior to that.
That was Stein Valley.
Stein Valley
Stein
Rediscovery.
Valley. I think that's like Statlium territory, and then there's one in Four Corners, New Mexico. Four Corners Rediscovery. The one in Haida Gwaii was in 1974.
1974.
Yeah, and the one in Kitlope, I went in 94, and we were the second year, so it had to be.
Okay. So I think it shows how long this. Yeah, Teresa said RFID was founded in 1978. The Rediscovery International Foundation.
That must have been when it came around in Thailand, because Thailand had their 30th anniversary around the same time that Haida Gwaii had their big 30th anniversary.
So 80% of us in this group right now have been affected tremendously, lifelong affected by this program. And the reason organizations like EcoTrust and that helped Rediscovery establish a footing into what is known as a Goyawa, it's Eagle Clan territory, was because my Baba Cecil had went into the Kitlope for a 4-day fast to get his mind, his words, reset himself to come back into the new established world. He needed to go find his spirit. As he walked through the Kitlope, he found markers, tags, and he brought them back to Gerald Amos, who was a chief at that time, elected chief and band. So they started inquiring about it, and my Baba Cecil worked at the milling
West Fraser?
Yeah, and he found out that his own employers were going to be going in there to cut down the Kitlope and harvest it. So Rediscovery helped out by putting the youth there on the land, occupying with the camps, showing them that is beneficial for, let's say, youth like me, reestablishing everything for them, better understanding of who they are all the time. And before you know it, other organizations came out, helped support that, and they were able to protect what is now known as the biggest temperate rainforest in the entire world is protected. And my Baba Cecil always called it the arteries of Mother Earth. It still has the purest water in the world. It has what's lake spawning sockeye. So I think other places might call them kokanees or something like that. But when we went there, it's so rich. James Robinson made a spear and he fished with the spear and got fish. He got us dinner with it. And it was just so phenomenal to see him there, sitting there, whittling away, reading a book on how to make a Triton spear, they're called. Has one in the middle and then two prongs inner like that come off it. So when you get that fish, the prongs go out and then re-stab it. And he still has it to this day. When I went back for my training for the second time, I needed to renew all of my wilderness survival training and everything like that, first aid, my canoe certificates. James came out and we talked about, I was like, it's so weird because you were my, what we call, let's say, camp lead or something like that in Rediscovery. And for me to be training with him was pretty amazing. So we reminisced about the Kitlope, and a camp that was established there was to get the warriors back. And they flew someone in from Thailand, and on a Goyawa beach, they practiced Muay Thai with the male camp to retrain them on how to physically fight. And one of the elders said, how did you know that this is where we trained our warriors? So without that camp, that wouldn't have been talked about, and we wouldn't have the echoes of it right now, like the song David and what is his name? David and Mike Wilson created, The Ripples in the Water. That's what we're feeling now, is everything coming back. So myself, Teresa, Cora Lee, my niece Sarah, who's also been a part of the camps, and Paul Kanieks have been greatly impacted by Rediscovery. I wouldn't be who I am today without them catching me in time. If they never caught me in time, I don't know if I would even recognize myself. So that's how powerful of camps that they have. Even their training, when you go in for training, it's lifelong friendships that you make. Not only that, you get to know about our neighbors. We're doing camps last year, and one thing we noticed with the youth, we had King Gingol and a bunch more up north, Kispioks, and we kept asking them who their neighbors were. So for us here, who's our neighbors to the north? Who's our neighbors to the south? A lot of us know that, but these are things being forgotten. Each grease trail that we have established is now a major highway. The first settlers that came in widened them out to put their wagons on them. So after that, they were able to pave them. The Kitimat Highway going to Terrace was navigated by Cecil Paul and a bunch of his, what he'd call brothers, his the ones he wanted to take with him. They went and actually established it all to use the trail all the way through. Right, Escuelas, Maureen. Glad you came.
Escuelas.
So I think that's where I wanted to end it on my experience. As we started this talking about what I wanted to talk about, I found out that I might not represent the history as well as what we call our Wakwa here, Paul Kanieks. She's like me, a lifelong Rediscovery person. She holds many more of the Rediscovery songs than I do. I sang a version of a Rediscovery song that I hold. All these neighboring communities and different, what I'm familiar with is in Canada. She's more familiar with a lot more of the international aspects of this. So I would like to pass it over to her to show some of the experiences she's had in her time with Rediscovery.
Thank you. I want to start by sharing a photo that I rushed around and looked on my phone to see if I could dig it up. But it's a photo of me and my cousin Crystal coming back from our first rediscovery camp. I think she was 10 and I was 11 years old. And this was taken on her late Baba Glenn's boat. He came to pick us up, Kitlope Lake. So this is us. We have a cedar in our hair, and I had my paint on my face, and that's her late Grand Alice. And so this is how old I was when I went to my first rediscovery camp. I was 11 years old, and I feel like I was kind of at the turning point in like leaving childhood and going on to the other part of my life, and hearing our ancestral stories and the depths of our homeland in Kitlope replaced childhood fairy tales for me and kept that feeling of magic alive. There's many things I can say about rediscovery and the impact that it's had on my life. I teach cultural awareness for a living and ancestral connection, and I always start my story by talking about rediscovery, saying when I was 11, I got took out to my homeland and we got to see how our ancestors might have lived, and someone put a feather in my hand and gave me permission to speak truth. Someone put a drum in my hand and gave me permission to have a voice. Someone put me in ceremony and gave me permission to have feelings. And that's why I'm here today. And that's echoed on through my life. I did Vision Quest when I was 12, and it was thundering and lightning all night long. And I feel like that prepared me for life. It prepared me for the storm of life. And my life has been an echo of that experience. All the people that I met through that rediscovery showed me the kind of people that I want to fill my life with, and the experience of sitting around a fire and passing the feather, and the way that people would speak when they'd share with I called it their talking feather voice. I always wanted to get people to talk with that voice. So as a teenager and growing up, I always would try to do things and ask questions and read them poetry and things like that, poems that I would write to get them to speak with what I called their talking feather voice, kind of like their voice of truth and their voice of heart. And I feel like I continue to do that today. My business is literally called Heart to Heart, Heart to Heart Indigenous Relations. And so when I was in my early 20s, I went and lived in Cree Blackfoot Lakota territory in the place now known as Calgary. And I worked for the Rediscovery there for a few years, and they were one of the only ones at that time that had year-round staff and year-round programming. And so they did camps, they did schools, and they did international. And I ended up doing all three. I started by doing international stuff and going and living in Guyana, South America with a group of Indigenous people there. We're paired up with a group of Indigenous people from all over North America, or mostly all over Canada. And so we started out by living on the foothills of the Rocky Mountains together, sleeping in teepees and doing sweat lodge and doing Vision Quest and getting to know each other as a group for a few months, sorting our stuff out as a group to prepare us to go and live by the equator in Guyana, South America, the northeast tip of South America, and live like what I heard our grandparents grow up talking about, the way they lived. There was only one radio for the village. If you wanted water, you had to get it by bucket. Everything was cooked over a fire. There was one light bulb and we turned it on for a few hours a day with the generator. We slept in huts. We slept in called a thatched roof hut, in hammocks with mosquito nets on the savannah, kind of like their version of prairie. We'd walk into the jungle every day to collect wood, to cook our food over the fire, and we lived just a very simple life. We ended our time there. Two things we did. Each of us were assigned to do we had to give our first workshop. So I gave my first workshop on writing and communication. I got people to do journaling and just to share heart to hearts with each other. I facilitated it. and every one of the leaders that came with us and every one of the youth shared different things, different kinds of workshops, and then we led a conference. We led a big conference with 5 representatives of the 14 surrounding villages. Each of the villages sent 5 people, 2 elders and 3 youth, and they came, and we had 3 different workshop spaces going on at different times, and it was a combination of what us as Turtle Island Indigenous wanted them to know. Like I did one on alcoholism and fetal alcohol syndrome because they didn't know about that, although they were starting to be affected by alcoholism. And the local people got to do workshops with their community members about things that matter to them. So the introduction of roads from Brazil, for example, was really impacting them at the time, and they just needed to like have a conversation about it as a people. So they had a international program and a schools program. So I got to work at a First Nations elementary school, helping implement Indigenous teachings into their already existing curriculum. They started everyday smudging. The whole entire school would smell like sage every morning. They had Korean Blackfoot language class. They had powwow drumming class. They had hoop dancing class. And I learned about sage, which is why I smudge with sage still. And what I saw with that rediscovery there is that they, like every rediscovery is a reflection of the land and the people. So with our rediscovery, we would canoe and we would kayak and we would learn about salmon and we'd learn about the different medicines of that land, and we'd hear songs and teachings and stories from that land. In the rediscovery in Calgary, we would do sweat lodge, we would sleep in teepee, we'd hear stories about buffalo, stories about coyote. I learned different things about like pipe ceremony, tobacco teachings. Each pole in a teepee has a different teaching, so I learned about that. A lot of, they pray very differently. When I hear them pray, it feels like a different kind of spirit to me. They're very much star people, like big sky people, so a lot of their stories have to do with stars and the sky. And so it was really beautiful to see how their camp reflected the land. And so the international program, one of the things they did was they would get people to go and live in places for 6 month periods of time. They'd get 2 people to go and live in a community that expressed interest in starting a rediscovery program, and they'd go and they'd live there and they'd get to know the people. They'd get to know them and they'd get to know who was what and who is in what role, and who would be good at what, and what kind of relations need to be built, what kind of resources they have, where the camp could be, what kind of tools they might need, what kind of funding to ask for. So they'd live there for 6 months at a time, and then they'd come and report back, I guess, to Rediscovery International or wherever. And so that's how they helped get rediscovery started in Bolivia, Argentina, the island of Dominica, Guyana, South America. And every single person I've told, like especially, Indigenous people, when I tell them about rediscovery, they're like, oh, my people need that. My people, can you come teach my people how to rediscovery? And it's just so, I heard there was one in like the country of Jordan, the one in Thailand has been around for a long time. I think every people who have a chance to do a rediscovery has done a rediscovery. I'm pretty sure there's one in Germany, because that book that Tom Henley wrote about with all the games and stuff in it has been translated to German. I got to meet the people who did it. And then so I did the international stuff with the Calgary Rediscovery. I did the schools, and then we did camps for all different ages, back-to-back camps all summer. And they were the only rediscovery camp that I saw that had an adult rediscovery. So they would end the summer with like a 2-week adult rediscovery, and a lot of people on a deep healing journey, mostly white people, honestly. I was one of the only Indigenous people there. That's where I really got to spend time with David, the late David Lortzman, and just a lot of ceremony, a lot of the like really fun, beautiful games that I played with the kids. When we played that with adults, they would take it so deep and make it so metaphorical, and we'd spend hours talking about it and debriefing it after, like that activity called forest blanket, where you lay on the forest floor and you get covered with branches and moss and things, and you get to experience what the forest floor sees. Doing that with a group of adults was powerful, and I did not expect that. I was 21 years old and put in such a leadership role. Um, what Rediscovery has really done for me, and was it kept pushing me into my roles that I feel like I was meant to. They're like, okay, now you're gonna go with this elder to this place to give a workshop on this topic. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure. I'll go help this elder, or I'll go like give this workshop to this group of people. It's like they saw my potential and they saw what they knew I would be good at and would just like push me into it. And then things would come out of me and I would be leading a workshop. And so that was my original training as a facilitator and as someone who led groups. And since then, I've applied that same knowledge in so many different ways, including the workshops that I do. Yeah, I just shared a whole bunch. I just talked for a while. I'm sure that this has impacted folks, and maybe folks have questions, or curiosities, or maybe it's like sparked alive some like thoughts and feelings about your experience with the Rediscovery Program. But this has been kind of like a summary of where Rediscovery brought me. The last place it brought me was East Vancouver. I worked for Warriors Against Violence youth program in East Vancouver, doing um, every every day, Monday to Friday, we'd meet up with the same group of youth and just do stuff with them. We'd cook, we'd do theater stuff, we'd go hiking. There was like breakdancing every Wednesday. We'd make music with them, we'd do crafts with them, we'd bring in other workshop leaders. So that was my last thing with Rediscovery. And then I moved away and got married and lived in California and Hawaii, and um, traveled for a while, facilitated in different ways, and now I'm back and I run my own business, and I applied everything that I learned from Rediscovery to what I do for a living now. Wow.
Well, I had no idea that you did all that stuff. Like, I'm just finding out now. I'm wondering, like, how did I not know that? Because that's quite the level of commitment to Rediscovery for one. But I think your personality and your unique set of tools would probably open any door for you, regardless from your spirit. You glow, and for it, or somebody to be able to represent Rediscovery in such a way in many different nationalities and ancestral backgrounds is just phenomenal. That must be such the impact for you personally to be able to see the ways of all the ancients. Like, wow. I can't imagine. I would like to sit in TP one day. Just like I've not been in a big house yet. Imagine what our people are going to feel like when we get a big house. Like that's going to be that impactful. And yeah, it's just amazing to see. I like hearing the stories of Coyote, because all the different creation stories that our brothers and sisters have of their creation stories are just so phenomenal to me. And I like hearing all the ancient stories. I truly believe a lot of those ancient stories are real still. I don't believe that they were made up, but I believe the time of the world was different back then, where these, as was interpreted earlier, fairy tales and folklore were just the way it was. Um, I still believe in magic. I still believe in a lot of different things like that. So imagine being able to do a rediscovery based on shamanism and getting a whole bunch of healers together sending them down to, I'm assuming Brazil would be one of the most accommodating places, and bringing back shamanism applicable to our ancestral way, because a shaman would be able to teach you that. They say different medicine people around the world vibrate at a different medicine frequency, and the true shamans could actually see the aura of that frequency. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because I could imagine the aura that you have if I was able to see auras. And all those elders that you talk about, they must have been able to see that, you know, because how would you be invited here to here to here, and you're not asked at that point, I don't believe, like you were saying, you're told what to do. And you being raised, you know, the responsibility of being told, you know, you get up and go and you do it. Elders aren't hinting around. If they tell you that you should be doing something, like, they're very blunt about it, I find. So
I
I feel,
remember one of the elders was going through a hard time, and she asked me to come and be with her while she was setting up at this conference. And I was thinking, oh, this must be because I spent so much time with my great grandmother, my late Granny Ethel, who passed when I was 14, and I would sit with her for hours and hours on end and hear her entire life stories. She's like, talk about down south, talk about when she was a girl, because she's Newtowners from the island. And I feel like that shifted my energy in life in such a way that elders felt comfortable with me. And so
yeah,
I think that really kind of shone the way for me. And I'd always gravitate to elders, and they'd always gravitate to me. And that provided a lot of opportunities in my life. And because of all of the big spirited, beautiful hearted people that I met through our Kitlope rediscovery, I went 4 times on 94, 95, 96, 97. Oh, and then again in 99. All the big spirited people I met through there gravitated me towards other big spirited people. And I remember another big teaching that I received through rediscovery and the mentorship and the eldership was through, and I think about this more because he's passed now, but David, we were at the 10-year anniversary celebration for Ghost River Rediscovery Calgary, and I was really emotional. I don't know what was going on for me, but I was feeling really down. And he was organizing an event that evening and kind of asking different people to tell stories and to sing and to, present. And he was kind of coming up with the schedule. And he asked me if I would sing. And I was like, no, I'm not really feeling good. I don't know. I'm good. I'm not really feeling good. And he didn't say anything for a while. But then before he got up and walked away, he said, I think you need to sing because you don't feel good. And then he walked away. And I think that was like, the medicine you carry has very little to do with you. You're just its vessel. Get out of your own way, pick up the drum and sing. And so I did that night, and I did feel really good. It was really, really healing, and really a big medicine. And so that teaching has echoed through my life. Um, it's just so beautiful to see all the different ways that people honor earth and how they honor spirit, because the way they do it, um, they're very humble. They're very, very humble people. When they pray, they say, Great Spirit, I am small. I am small. Please have pity on me. I am small. And I think, wow, they're just that's how they, I don't know how else to describe it, but to say just that. And I never heard that kind of prayer before. And the way we might pray, and the way I'm inspired to pray in this homeland on the coast here, is to give thanks for all the abundance. There's such a diverse, lush amount of abundance. It's kind of has a softness to it, a softness and like a flow and a rhythm to it. Um, but I think that's one of the main things that rediscovery influenced in the way I see the world, is to hear and to understand how different people honor connection to spirit and honor connection to land.
That's really cool. It makes me think that the what you're trying to find is it keeps them humble right away because they're self-admitting right away to great spirit or creator that they're small and to watch over us because of that. So that's what I feel when I heard what you said.
I remember one night I was sleeping in a teepee, and I was having a really hard time sleeping, and I was really restless, and I finally got up and I went and I stood outside, and I I had the feeling to look up, and I saw beautiful northern lights just like dancing above the horizon, but it was white. It wasn't green. It
Hmm,
was white. And then I looked this way and I looked that way and I looked behind me, and it was coming from all around. So
cool.
it wasn't the northern lights.
What was it?
I think that the spirit world was having a big party.
Oh yeah.
Because
I was gonna.
it was like really intense feeling. And the one time that I did a vision quest on that land, I woke up and I felt like I heard lots and lots and lots of people talking. And I guess that was where they would gather every summer to do their just kind of gathering of nations, trading, connecting. It was right on the river, and I must have felt that. So I think that the spirits were coming back to celebrate that, maybe because we did sweat lodge on that land and opened up, the spirit pathways for them to come. It was very, very powerful, and it felt very much like sky people. They're very much sky people.
That's cool. It reminds me of when they say a lot of our ancestors can't find their ways back anymore because the grease trails aren't traveled anymore, so they can't find their way back. So someone like you that goes and sings on the ancestral lands might help them reestablish those spirit grease trails to be able to find their way home. Then imagine I'm 100% believer that when I sing, I have all of these spirits around me coming just to listen. Like that's what helps me actually sing. So thank you for that insight. I'm so glad that you took the reins on that one. That's very, very impressive. I'm very impressed with that. And what an experience. What an experience Rediscovery led you down. Like that's just awesome. Not many people get to look into all of those ancestral ways of being, and you got quite a unique experience. I remember actually when you came back from, I think you lived on Hawaii, and I was in Vancouver and I asked to take you out for breakfast, and we went to a place and I was like, these are ridiculous. Look how big these things are. And you started laughing and you're like, it's a westernized diet. And then you educated me on the diets of other people around the world and how they only eat this much and stuff. And that really stayed with me the entire time. I had no concept of that. So lots of insight that you bring, lots of skill, personality. Like I'm glad that you helped me out with these things to be able to present, and I can't wait to other people want to start participating and do their own presentations on what they know, because that's what I believe this is going to start evolving into. I was actually talking with Coralie about helping me do presentations to be able to show our family's way of the Ulican processing, which might different from your guys's camp, which guarantee difference from the camps all surrounding, right? So, and then I've always had a dream of having rediscovery specifically for the Ulican boil, because we have a handful of masters left. And if we had a rediscovery for that, would be really, really big. So I think with platform rediscovery, you're almost endless, it's almost endless. You could do anything.
I think the few things that make it a rediscovery camp as opposed to just camping is having a spirit spot, um, having a talking circle, and having 4 directions.
Mhm.
Anything else can happen. Anything, any other possible thing, every rediscovery is different, but I think it wouldn't feel like a rediscovery to me if it didn't have those 3 things.
Nice.
Teresa?
Do you have your hand up there, Teresa?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment what a great testimony that your Nuyem has, testimony to rediscovery that has how it has impacted your Nuyem and your story and where it has brought you to today. And I just wanted to humbly and respectfully put out there and maybe manifest a camp facilitated by both you and Dustin, because I think that would be the ultimate dream camp. Just because you guys bring so much to the experience. I myself personally haven't experienced a full rediscovery camp. I experienced a 4-day camp with some of our residential school survivors. It was still very amazing and impactful. But I remember the camps that you talk about in the 90s. Those were the camps that my sister was a junior guide at. And I was counting down the years until I was old enough in my parents' eyes to be able to go. And by the time I was old enough, all the camps were shut down and they didn't have them anymore. So I goal is to eventually get those camps back up and running again so that our kids can experience them. Because the places that I've heard of, like especially in the Kitlope, it was such a beautiful place to have those camps run because of the magic and the stories that those lands hold and remain untouched. It really added to the essence of the experience for so many people. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I really think those are the testimonies that more people need to hear of rediscovery camps. So if you're ever willing to record or share that story on a larger platform with rediscovery proponents and potential future leaders, that would be a really amazing thing for people to hear, is how it's impacted your life. And that's so cool. You got to go to so many of the camps and experience the different camps that they offer. That must have been quite the experience. So just thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're
I'm
welcome.
totally putting it out there, future camp.
I actually approached her already to say we might need a second facilitator this year, and I would like it to be a male-female polarity. And I asked her if she would be willing to, and she was going to be looking at the dates. And I think that your manifestation might come true, because to me it'd be an honor to facilitate. Imagine we had a picture of us graduating together, the Chaco School. And then we have even further pictures, I remember, of being in the Kitlope. So imagine all of these years later coming in as 2 HISLA facilitators, being able to do what we could do in a short amount of time to influence the next, camp facilitators. I think it would be gratefully beneficial. And I'm still, again, re-putting it out there that, you know, I feel kind of underqualified now. No, I could hold my own, but I think we would bounce a lot of great energy and positivity into such a facilitation that I think it would be such an impact for people again. And this year we're making drums and stuff, and I want to do like song composition for people to start being able to hone in and do their own songs, and maybe a quick form line so they can understand like how to balance, so they could make their own drawings for their own drums. Like we really have the skill, the time, and they don't have to do the painting and all that before they leave, but understanding a bit of that form line for themselves, I believe that's an important thing, because they can go back to their own camps and start their own intro into form line. Then what does that entail? Rediscovering what we did. So I think that doing some things like this are so profound. in such a big way. We won't even know the impact until someone comes up and tells us, like how Tom Henley impacted everybody. We won't know our impact until years go by and people remember. So I think my favorite thing as a role model, when I go into the schools, and I use my rediscovery training to be a role model, I go into the schools, I make sure that they have the first aid kits equipped to go out in the wilderness, and I will refuse to take them out unless they have that kit. Then when I go swimming or something, the little kids come up and introduce their parents to me. I was the guy that took them out, and I'm there with my family. So that's the real payment for me, making that impact in that one person's life. You could never ever take that back, and if you're making such a positive impact, what does that mean for that youth? They might take it for the rest of their life, and then they're going to make their mark on somebody. So this is how our teachings echo through the generations.
I
So I
think
see.
I think
Oh, go
something
ahead.
that I really had to learn as a facilitator taught through Rediscovery, because my first facilitation was with youth. First I was the youth, and then I was facilitating the youth, and I'd always get brought to these meetings to talk to funders and
Yeah.
to convince them to give us more money, and I'd be like, I'm living proof it worked. And I tell my whole Rediscovery story. But one of the things that helped me when facilitating youth, and they look really distracted and they're kind of fidgety and you don't really even know if they want to be there, was it's not for us to know. It's not for us to know whether or not what we shared impacted them. That's between them and their heart now, and their journey and their life and what it means for them. And if they tell us, beautiful. If we find out one day, beautiful. But that's between them and the mystery now. I did my part. I was the vessel for whatever spirit needed me to do. Now the rest is up to them. Teresa, what you were saying about in the 90s, how it was in the Kitlope. Whenever people ask me, like, how should I do rediscovery in my land? I'm like, do it far away. Do it far away. The further away, the deeper the impact. If if you're like right next to like a dirt road, or you're like half an hour out of town, or like if you can see traffic, or if there's like, it's like the your spirit isn't really quite clear yet of all the big energy of the colonized world. So the deeper you go, and the more of a journey that it takes to get there, the deeper the impact it's going to have. The simplest things, I've like, so many simple things were taught to me through the Kitlope rediscovery that just stayed with me forever. And one of the other major ways that rediscovery has impacted my life was the medicine wheel. So the medicine wheel that we did, the 4 direction run every morning, the 4 fire ceremony. So that medicine wheel has stayed with me, and I've really grown with it for 30 years now. Holy. Since I was 11, I'm 41, whatever that math is. And it's become the basis of how I understand and relate to my human experience. And I think that that's another thing that I could talk about for a very, very, very long time. is
Thanks.
the medicine wheel. And I get conflicted by it because I don't know whose it is, because it's from rediscovery. And is it my
Did
place?
that.
And having lived in Cree-Blackfoot territory, where they take their medicine wheels very seriously, I got to understand the cultural sensitivity of medicine wheels. So I wouldn't know who to ask permission for. It's really just been my own private kind of like spiritual practice with it. So yeah, Dustin, do you know things
I
about that?
believe Tom created that because they couldn't get gifted any ceremony. And when they started using ceremony, they got approached that it wasn't appropriate. So the one that Rediscovery uses with the 4 directions, burning it and stuff like that, that one was created by Rediscovery International, because what the youth wanted when they were questioned, what do you want out of Rediscovery? What do you want to see it? We want more ceremony. We want more ceremony. Now, any ceremonial holders know that it might not be appropriate depending where you're going, and ceremony. So they actually invented that one to be able to give them those experiences with ceremony in a more appropriate way. So that's to my understanding. And you could ask Tom Henley a little bit more about that. He actually just left yesterday to an event for quite some time. Actually went to Witset yesterday, tried to stop in at Tom's to say hi to him. We saw these tracks come out of the snow, and I was like, oh man, I don't think they're there. I'm not too sure if I want to drive in. And Pat was there, and he goes like this. He's just outside, and he's like, they go like this there, hey, in Thailand, they don't go like this. So he's like telling us to come. We went inside, and he told me about his poor chickens, how they went to the coop, they're all gone. A couple of them were dead. And then he went in the coop and looked up, and there's a hawk up there. And basically, he clubbed that hawk and broke its back. Now I got it downstairs in my freezer. And if I never stopped in just to say hi, I wouldn't have had such a beautiful gift. So the reason the hawk is really great for me is when I'm doing artwork. Eagle feathers are very come with legalities, eh? Where hawk feathers don't. So I could actually incorporate a lot more of this. Plus, I really want to do a hawk tail fan, hawk wing tips, and then really position the hawk talons. I think I have 4 pairs of eagle talons frozen in my downstairs that I still yet to work on. So, well, I'm gonna hand it back to you. I think you're getting ready to do probably 5 songs back to back.
Oh, thank you for the lavender bundle, Polkiniks. I got it.
Yay, it made it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
you're so
appreciate it.
welcome. Um, I shared Dustin that I wanted to do the version of Sunsets Over the World that I do. You know, I was saying like everyone has their different way of doing it. So I'll do that, which I learned through the Rediscovery Program. I think the origins of that are from the Stein Valley Rediscovery. Someone was away on a canoe trip and they were missing home. They were homesick, and so they wrote this song. So that's the only origins of this song that I've heard of. So if anyone here, anyone who hears the recording knows more about the origins of this song, please let us know. When the sun sets over the world, I'll be thinking of you. I know you are far away, no matter contribution as a people, giving thanks at this time for the piece of knowledge and pieces of knowledge that exist within each of us about our culture, about our Nuyem, about our people. That beautiful place inside of us where we carry a piece of that bigger puzzle that we're putting together at this time. And giving thanks for all the things that support us in this journey of finding our footing, of finding our way back to ourselves. All the things that support our journey of returning to ourselves as a people. And giving thanks for that beautiful place where the mountains meet the ocean in our homeland, and giving thanks for all the creatures that make that home the wild beauty that it is, and honoring at this time the echo of our ancestors as their light shines through us, as their love gives through us, as their strength lives through us, and honoring and giving thanks for their blood memory as it pulses through our veins and informs who we are and how we are and where we're going as a people, and honoring and giving thanks for all the ways in which we've connected and shared and listened and understood and felt understood by this coming together of hearts, and honoring and giving thanks for this contribution to our journey that we're in at this time as a people. Wah.
Thank you guys. Good night.